Well, everyone, the PlayStation Portal is one of those consoles that is kind of a console, but kind of a hybrid, like a remote player. And I will definitely tell you, this type of console, this type of like gaming system for the most part, it's a very, very interesting type of experience. Because when it first came out, it was very limited. But now with the ways that Sony has kind of started kind of exploring this particular gaming handset, it's actually been a very interesting experience. So we'll take a look at this console, see if it's still worth buying throughout this whole entire year. But I do want to hit on the fact that Sony, for their future of this console, it might end up becoming a completely different system in the next coming years. So we'll take a look at that throughout this whole entire video. First things first though, if at any point throughout this whole entire video, you want to go ahead and buy, one of these PlayStation Portals, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the PlayStation Portal, this whole entire system is basically a PlayStation 5 controller cut in half with a screen in the middle of it. That is probably the best explanation you can kind of have for this type of system. Now, what I like about this PlayStation Portal is that the display itself is actually very decent. It's giving you a very big 8-inch LCD screen. So it is actually a pretty good looking panel. I think it is actually much better than I would have thought. It is LCD, so it's not OLED, but still it's like a very, very good looking panel for the most part. It's also very thin, and the design language of this console is very unique. It's not every day you see a console that looks something like this, or even a gaming handheld that looks like this. I think the closest example I can kind of think to it is that if you take one of those like gaming controllers, like a backbone for your, for your Android phone or iPhone, it's kind of like that. But one of my favorite controllers is the PlayStation 5 controller. So this is like a really cool system. It seems like it's almost designed for me. I just wish I could go and like put my iPhone or Android screen on this thing, because the handheld itself is actually a really cool concept. I just wish I could go and play my own games. Like I wish I could have Android on this thing. Like honestly, that'd be Godspeed. That'd be like the best thing ever. Now you do get a USB Type-C port on this thing, which is great. So it charges everything at once. The controllers, like I said, are the same thing basically as a PlayStation 5 controller. So you're not really going to feel like you're getting a super different experience. And because this thing is supposed to be more so like a remote player from your PlayStation, so if you're going from a PlayStation to this controller, you're basically going to feel right at home, and you're not going to feel like it's a super weird or like different type of controller, because it's going to be basically the same exact thing. And that's kind of what you're getting, right? The concept of this thing is pretty basic. Beyond that, the system and the thought process behind the system is basically, it's not a standalone console. You have to have a PlayStation 5 basically, or you used to, in order to go and get some sort of capability from this thing. Before, like even like last year, 2 years ago, if you were to buy this thing and you did not have a PlayStation 5, you couldn't really do anything with it. Like this is not a PlayStation Portable. This is not supposed to be something like that. This is a console that you basically buy, and it's supposed to be it's like an extension to your PlayStation. Same thing as the PSVR headset. It's the exact same thing. But Sony did make a change last year, which really changed the way that I think this console is supposed to be going through in the future. And we'll take a look at that in a second. But one of the other big things that I really do like about this controller is just the fluidity of it. This thing feels very good, right? It doesn't feel super cheap. It's not even super expensive either. It's like $200 something. I actually think that's not that bad of a price to pay for this type of like hardware. It just so happens that there wasn't that much feature set behind it before buying a PlayStation 5. So for $200, you could buy this thing. But the problem, like I said before with it, was that if you were planning on getting it, you would probably get into a situation where you wouldn't be able to get like endless amounts of capability. So that was essentially kind of a problem here. But guess what Sony ended up doing? They ended up going through and they essentially gave us the capability of using these types of games and playing some games here and there on this console without us having to go through and own a PlayStation console itself. So this was a really big change from the previous generation, because before, like I said before, we were basically reliant on Sony going through and having us link our PlayStation Portal to our PlayStation 5 and going down that direction. But guess what? We now had the capability of basically going through, and we now have the capability of playing cloud games from our PlayStation account into our PlayStation Portal. So this is something that's really cool. If we have PlayStation Plus, we can basically go through and play those PlayStation Plus games inside of our PlayStation Portal. Now there's some downsides to this, which we'll talk about, but that in and of itself is a humongous upgrade. So now if you don't even have a PlayStation 5 at all, you can now go through and get some sort of capability from your PlayStation Portal just by having a PlayStation Plus account. You still have to pay a monthly subscription and all that, but that is still a really cool thing to basically have and kind of have that type of experience. So I, for one, I'm a massive fan of that. And I do think this in and of itself is such a cool thing that Sony ended up doing. And I think if they just kind of end up doing some similar things to this, I think the next PlayStation Portal, there might be more onboard storage, and they could start giving us the capability of actually porting over those particular games, maybe onto like offline, so we can have it on our, like, stored onto our console, and maybe we can sync up to the cloud every once in a while, so we won't be relying on that Wi-Fi connection or internet connection. Then we could kind of do whatever we want to, and that'd be another really awesome thing that we can basically do. So we're gonna have to kind of wait and see what happens with that, but I genuinely do think this in and of itself would be an amazing, awesome thing to kind of basically be able to experience from that side as well. But beyond that, there is kind of a con with this, as I mentioned, is that you have to be connected to the Wi-Fi connection. So everything is not perfect. Having to constantly go through and get connected to Wi-Fi can be annoying. And I feel like this in and of itself would be something that would be kind of annoying for the most part. And it does require a subscription. So if you're trying to go through and play these games, well, you can't go and buy the hardware. You can't buy like a game card. You always have to have that PlayStation subscription in order to play these games. Hopefully that changes in the future, but as of right now, that's kind of where we're at. Now, on top of that, if your Wi-Fi connection is slow or if you have spotty Wi-Fi connections, well, that's going to be another kind of a problem that you're going to be experiencing there too. On top of that, another slight issue is that there's not really any applications that are dedicated for this particular console. So there's not really any YouTube applications or like Netflix you can't watch on here. It's really just cloud gaming. It's really just PlayStation Portal, like PlayStation Plus stuff. So that is also kind of a downside too, because when you take a look at some of the other handhelds, you like take a look at the Steam Deck, you can do anything on the Steam Deck. But even like a Nintendo Switch, there's still stuff you can use that console with, like Netflix and YouTube, that you don't have to necessarily, well, not Netflix, but whatever other applications, like you still have more things you can do within those consoles rather than just playing games. So, although this thing even just got a big upgrade with the PlayStation Plus stuff, I'm hoping in the future Sony can go through and actually make this thing into a better, bigger console than what it was before. And I genuinely do think that's kind of what's going to end up happening here. With the way Sony's going with the PlayStation Portal, I genuinely do think this was a really, really good upgrade. And I would imagine that if you're going to go through and pick up one of these types of consoles, like, of course, this thing is a really good extension to like one of these other devices. Like, I think that's definitely a really good idea. But I would imagine that in the future, Sony is probably going to go through and they're going to make another PlayStation Portal, and I do have a feeling it's going to be better than this one, and I think it's going to give you some more capability when it comes down to this other side. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens, but in terms of that kind of covers it up here for the most part. I will tell you, if you're still in the market though, I think a Steam Deck or one of those type of handheld consoles, if you're looking at playing some sort of games offline on the go, those types of consoles might be giving you a better experience. That's kind of what I would recommend doing. And I do think if you're going to go through and pick up a device, those ones make a lot more sense to buy, just because those ones are giving you more capability when it kind of comes down to it from that side. So from that side, that kind of covers it up here officially now. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.